I'm gonna get started, guys. I have to. Last time I tried to do to post a live, and Sony wouldn't let me because the music was copyrighted or something. So I got my notes here, so you'll see me go back and forth, back and forth. Yeah, you laughing, but I'm like, It's cool. You know me. I'm cool with it. I'm just, busting your chops. All right, welcome, guys. We're gonna get started. As you can see, I was taking a nap, so I tied the crap out of my bonnet. Anyway, so welcome. My name is Francis. I'm a trained therapist, life coach. Some people call me a therapy coach, and I really help or support women in helping them to eliminate or remove emotional blocks so that they can thrive. That's what I do. So today I wanted to talk about your source power. And some of these things I'm going to say may overlap with the previous. You know what? Let me get my headphones because they're talking over there. I'll be right back.
Ya. Lo que pasa es que me lo mandaste primero en imagen. Ya. Ya no lo vi. Ya, perdón, discúlpame. No te estoy regañando, no, al contrario. No te estoy regañando. Oye, ¿y la cédula actualizada? Puta, no se deja, ¿va? Ya, o sea, sí, estamos tramitando. Vale. Entonces mañana la tenemos temprano, ¿no? Sí, sin problema. Órale, va.
Well, this thing is live. All right, guys, it's live. This is what happens. Anything goes in a live show. I'm all tangled up. I always seem to forget these headphones, I swear. So I'll make sure you guys can hear me properly. All right. Let's do this. Let's see here. All right, so thank you for joining me. Sorry for the delay. So you'll see me go back and forth with my notes to you guys. Thank you for spending time with me today. So one of the things that I want to talk about is your source power. And like I said last time, some of these things will overlap with some of the other videos that I did a little bit because everything is really intertwined, right? They're all moving in together. So what I want to say is that I want you to really think about some of these things. I want you to, first off, believe that you are the creator of your life, period, right? You decide if you're a hostage of your past. You cannot control other people's behaviors, thoughts, feelings. Like, we know this intellectually, but emotionally and behaviorally, we often do the opposite, right? You also cannot change other people to suit how you feel, to make you feel better, and you can only change from within, and only yourself. Again, we know this, but we need to hear it sometimes, over and over again. And also, but know that you don't have to accept things that you're not okay with, period. I say these things because I want to remind you how powerful you are. I also want to remind you that what you can and cannot control, right? I posted something recently about controlling and being controlling, and how that's just another form of anxiety. And when I read that, I was like, whoa, that's powerful stuff. But it's true. I believe that there are things and people in our lives who dim our light. And it's up to us to reignite the flame, to reignite that spark. I believe the two main focuses of our lives, and I've talked about this before, is to do two things, which is, the first one is the process of unbecoming, and the second one is the process of unlearning. What do I mean by these two ideas? If this is your first time hearing this, so I believe that when we're born, we go through childhood and adulthood, and there's a lot of things that we learn either about ourselves or other people that ultimately is really just fed to us, right? And most of what we learn is entirely inaccurate. And so there's a lot of programming that happens in our lifetime, whether it's from school, whether it's from caregivers, society, TV, and so forth. So really it's up to us to do the work, to unravel, to untether, and to unbecome, and unlearn the things that are causing us to suffer or creating barriers for us to thrive. But I also want to highlight that we still need to embrace the suffering in our lives, because it's the pain that shapes us and strengthens us. You can check out my Transform video when I go a little bit in depth about that. But your goal in life is to really deprogram your mind and to create thoughts of your own. All right. So can I get a little spiritual with y'all? It's been a spiritual weekend for me. And you can take it, leave it, incorporate as your own, take bits and pieces and leave the rest. Totally okay. Do what you want with it. But I believe that we are all spiritual beings. With that said, I believe that another journey of life is to reconnect to our source, our spiritual self. What does that mean? Over time, there's a gap that develops and it grows, and it disconnects us from our own power source. So this is when we tend to lean on other things outside of us to create our happiness, to create our joy. Sometimes these are moments when you may have like self-doubts, or you question your feelings or your abilities, for example. And so the goal is for us to reconnect to our source. And the way that we do that usually is through activities like meditations, prayer, also through believing that you are the creator of your life and that you have the power to choose your attitude despite the circumstances. I always use the example of Viktor Frankl. If you haven't read the book, A Man's Search for Meaning, I highly, highly recommend it. And Viktor Frankl, he lost his entire family he lost his entire family through the Holocaust. And he found that, and he's a psychiatrist, psychoanalyst, and he found that there was this one pattern that kept people going, was changing their attitude and changing their mind about things. That's what kept him going through all the atrocities that he witnessed by being in the camp. And he wrote an entire book about it, and it's very powerful. And so I believe that the reason the world is on fire is because many of us are disconnected from that source power, right? Which to me, being disconnected means things like maybe it creates like lack of empathy, not enough compassion, maybe inauthenticity. You kind of forget, or you get lost figuring out who you are. And you forget that the power is within you, right? We get caught up with all the other stuff that's going on around us. So the more that we connect to the source, the more we can manage the day-to-day of our lives. Here's the thing though, we're always connected. We've been connected. We just need to be reminded that that connection exists. So I want to go through with you guys like 6 steps that you can actually reconnect to your source power. And so the first one that I have is, again, remember that you are always connected. Even if it doesn't feel like it, we'll always go back to that place, because that's a place that's going to ground you. Because you're already also an anomaly, right? Made in this massive, never-ending universe. You were created. We just forget we're connected mostly because of things that get in the way, like I mentioned earlier. Our suffering, our pain. It fogs things up for us, right? It's not a connection that can ever really be severed. And so when you're feeling disconnected, remember that you are always connected. And then once you do that, the step number 2, get around nature a lot more. Nature has healing properties, scientifically speaking. So one study I'm going to mention to you was done by, probably going to mess this name up, but it's a Japanese forest therapy expert, Yoshifumi Miyazaki. He did a research in Japan, and he found that people who spent 40 minutes walking in a cedar forest had lower levels of stress hormones called the cortisol, which is involved with like blood pressure and immune system functioning, compared with those who just spent 40 minutes walking in the lab. So he says he was surprised by that, but spending time in the forest actually induced a state of physiologic relaxation. So if you're not in the forest much, that needs to change just a little bit, whether you're all out in nature, walking around some kind of greenery. Now, another study showed that in Tokyo, found that trees and plants emit aromatic compounds called photonites. And so what that happens is, like, when we inhale, like, sometimes we walk outside and we're like, oh, it smells so good, like nature smells good, and it kind of brings a little smile on our face, like we feel good when we smell it. Well, that's because it's almost like an aromatherapy, and which has been studied to have therapeutic benefits. So in his study, he found that, like, people who walked or stayed overnight in a forest often exhibited changes in the blood that are associated with protection against, like, cancer, better immunity, and lower blood pressure. Of course, I'm no doctor, so take it as you wish and all with a grain of salt. However, if you've lived in the city, it's very different when you get out of the city and you go into nature. I've always lived in the burbs, but it's the quietness, the scents, the sounds, and the clean air that helps rejuvenate us, right? When I moved to Chiang Mai, Thailand, I felt rather quickly the benefits of being around the mountains and doing more outdoor activities and being more in nature. All right, so number 3, and you've heard this before, I'm gonna say it again, creating a gratitude ritual, whether it's waking up in the morning and saying thank you, thank you, thank you. It's the idea that there is something bigger than you, right? Connected to you. So by the process of osmosis, that is who you are. And through the practice of gratitude, you'll cultivate feelings of kindness, compassion, and balance. I promise, if you just stick with it. And the gratitude ritual doesn't have to be long. Like, none of these have to be long. It could be like a minute, 30 seconds, put your timer on, 10 seconds, 15 seconds, put your timer on, and just go through something that you're really thankful for. And then number 4, meditation. You've heard it, and you can call it whatever you want. Maybe it's not meditation. But quieting your mind allows you to hear your intuition clearly. And maybe you say, I already hear my intuition. But there's really nothing wrong with pausing for a moment, especially if you live in a fast-paced world as America, right? You're always going and going. So getting in the habit of just being quiet and still really helps settle you down. Whether it's like a minute, 30 seconds, again, put your timer on. It doesn't have to be long. It doesn't have to be every day. But make a commitment to do it once a week, and then build on that practice as time continues. And the thing about meditation, which I found even through my own practice, is that it has helped me to not only realign my energy, but also becoming less emotionally reactive to things. When people say things and then we go to that immediate default, whether it's anger, frustration, whatever you want to call it, but meditation creates space between you and whatever's going on externally so that you can react from a place of ease. It's not always, we're still human, right? We still we want to cut it up, but it's something that you can definitely practice and try. And so number 5 is letting go of the past. Easier said than done, I get it, and there's a process to doing that, right? But when you're fixated with the past, it keeps you identified with it. You still identify with that past role. And so the problem with that is it gives you a misconception of who you really are, because you're too busy being fixated with whatever's going on behind you. Okay? This is, make sure. Okay. Oh, we can change. Anyway, got distracted. And so when you let go of the past, you can fully embrace the present. And when you do that, you create a new narrative, a narrative that's more empowering than the one that's being repeated in your head. And so number 6, this one is being open to receiving. This is hard for a lot of people. In fact, me and my sister were just having a conversation about this. And it's hard for me too, and myself. I'm quick to say, nah, I'm good. But the more that you are open to receiving, the abundance then multiplies. And then you can give it to someone else. You receive, you give. You receive, you give. And the way that you do this is by doing the work that helps you to believe that you are worthy of all the things that you want and desire, and that you are worthy of also being someone to provide something for someone else. So stop shortchanging yourself. All right? So all these 6 steps combined is a nice start to help you to remember to always be connected when you're feeling off balance, overwhelmed, or even anxious. You are the source power. You don't have to look anywhere else outside of yourself to validate this. So the goal here is to live from the inside out, which is what I always say. So I hope that has been helpful. Right now I'm in lovely Tulum, Mexico, where it's like living in the jungle, even though it's like a lot of Tulum has been like built up a little bit, but it's all jungle. It feels great to be back in nature. So I encourage you to continue to remember that you are always connected when you're feeling a little bit off balance, and get used to practicing that phrase so that you can embody it. Thank you for joining me. Don't forget to go on my website, www. I don't know why I said that, it's like old school, but go on defineresistance.com, where I help you to defy the resistance that is going on in your life, and you can read all the stuff that I talk about. And what else? Yeah, sign up for my newsletter. I send even more intimate notes to my community there. And I'll see you guys next week. Take care, guys.